All right, you guys, it's Tara, Sojourn Psychology here with Emmet Michael, a local Edmonton artist. And there's so many amazing things about Emmet. And I'm hoping that you will hang in with us because we are going to do a few segments together. I just feel very, very excited about having Emmet here. So, Emmet, thank you.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, so just talking about you as an artist, I guess. What do you have going on these days? Like, what's the big sort of Emmett scoop for all of your Edmonton and Alberta
Yeah,
fans?
sure. Yeah. So yes, as you said, I'm an Edmonton-based singer-songwriter. I also identify as both queer and trans, and I grew up in a faith background. So a lot of my music is centered in talking about what that experience is like, as well as through that period of time, for a very long time, used drugs and alcohol to cope with that. And so a lot of my story is centered in advocating for holistic approaches to recovery and talking more openly about both in story and in my songs about what that period of my life was like as well. And then more broadly relatable messages like dealing with grief and loss. That's something everybody has an experience with, and learning how to love both ourselves and other people. So I'm always really, really excited to share some stories and share some songs related to my personal experiences. And then it's my hope that in doing so, I'm able to inspire other people to do the same. I just released my first full-length album just this past May 28th. It's called I Hope You're Home. And it's all about all of these experiences that I just talked about, both really, really old songs. Some are like 5 or 6 years old, to songs that I wrote like 2 weeks before the studio and was like, hey guys, what do you think of this? Should we put it on the album? So it's like all of these different aspects of my journey that have led me to a place where I could finally feel belonging and at home in my skin. So that's what's going on
Yeah.
with me.
I have to say the album is super good. I love your style, your voice, and your, I would say, technical ability, but I'm always a fan of lyrics.
Mm.
And so for you, I guess like what when did you become a, do you say lyricist? When did you become a poet? I don't know.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, for me, like music is like uh, the best part of music for me is the lyrics. That's where I like really connect to music. And so I think that was the case for me from like a really young age. And so growing up, I always listened to a lot of like worship and gospel music because that's what I grew up in. So I didn't actually hear like a ton of secular music. My mom was like a huge John Mayer fan, so that was like kind of the extent of it. But I think what really led me to a place where I started to about my own experiences, uh, that came into play because I was not really able to articulate myself, just like talking to people. I was so afraid, but I always loved music and I was always really passionate about it. And it sort of became this vessel for me to be able to channel all of the things that were hard for me to talk about. Because for whatever reason, if I got on stage and sang a song, everything became way less scary and those words weren't as heavy when they came out. And it took me a long time. Like I started writing songs when I was like a young teenager, and I only showed like a couple of close friends. It was a long time before I was comfortable performing my original stuff. But it was actually shortly after rehab, I wrote like my first song that I was really, really proud of while I was in rehab. And coming out of that place, I just was like, this isn't something that I can go back from. Like, this is what I want to do. And my life hadn't been the same since.
That's amazing. And to me, what I hear is that notion of when you're in the fullness of your calling or when you're in the fullness of who you are, and part of that is this poetry and it's so cool. It's just, yeah, to hear an artist talk about the vulnerableness of really putting yourself out there.
Mm.
But for a person who that's your calling, it's like that works. That was helpful or healing or something.
Yes. Yeah. And that makes it so much easier to be able to do because it's like, I don't know that I could not do it if I tried to. And, you know, there was a period like when I was in my very active addiction where I didn't even pick up a guitar or a pencil or write anything. And it was just like, it basically, I got to treatment, and this was the space where for the first time in years, I was, oh my gosh, sorry for the dogs going crazy upstairs. I have upstairs neighbors that are just losing it. So that's what you're hearing. But yeah, like I was just in this space all of a sudden where everything was just quiet, and all of the emotions that I had buried for so long were in my face. And I was like, what do I do with this? And that's like really what led me to the songwriting. And ever since, I've just been like, okay, this is going to be the way that I communicate with other people. And the really cool thing about music is it's a universal language, and people who hear it will hear aspects of their own stories in those songs. And then it becomes this like connection between myself and others, but it also inspires other people upon listening to something that might be particularly vulnerable to be like, okay, I think I can share this as like my own story as well. And I think like everybody sort of has their own way of doing that, whether it's music, art, writing, sitting down with a friend and having coffee. Everybody sort of has like their way that they feel most comfortable projecting themselves. And so I just think it's really cool that for me, that gets to be music. Yeah, it's pretty sweet.
It's adorable, actually. And I think that's a thing about you. Like there's this authenticity and this realness. And also when I hear you speak just right now, it's like, man, everybody can identify with what you're saying if we are acknowledging that, yeah, sadness exists, pain exists as a part of our humanness. So we're going to wind this piece down, but Emmet, would you play us out? Will you play us whatever you want to play?
Sure. Yeah, sounds good. I love that. I get to choose. Whoa.
Yeah, you choose. I'm choosing later. But you get to
and you're allowed. Yes, you're allowed. So this song is actually, this is a song that's off of my new album, and it's called Guessing Game. I thought it would be fitting for this show because it's about mental health. I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety at a young age, and then later in treatment with borderline personality disorder. And that caused a lot of difficulty for me in maintaining relationships. And every day felt like a guessing game. I didn't know what was to come. And I carried a lot of guilt for the way that my mental illness impacted others. So that's what this song is about. I'm so scared of my own shadow, 'cause he looks so much like me. So I'll keep turning all the lights out, close my eyes and try to sleep. Try to color in the lines now. Watercolor always bleeds. And all the critics whisper about how abstract always looks so cheap. One day I feel far away, next I'm feeling so close. Every day's a guessing game. I don't know who I'll be tomorrow. All my dreams are alone and widowed. My motivation died so young. I can't make peace with how the time goes, and all the things I won't become. One day I feel far away, next I'm feeling so close.
guessing game. Don't know who will be tomorrow. Some days I'm a child again, coping with an old soul. Every time I run away, my heart is just on going home. Home. I know you hate that I'm unhappy, and that it shows in all my songs. I picked this habit up in passing. I think there's cynic in my blood. She still has the heart to choose me after everything I've done. I know the grace is always moving. I know that home is who you love.
Wow. Beautiful. I love that one. Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
love that song.
Thank you very much.
I need to insert the crowd cheering right here.
That's awesome. I was just on a new platform called Bramble. It's sort of like Zoom, but you can be this cartoon avatar type thing. And I spoke at a conference through that platform, and all of the little like emojis at the bottom, instead of clapping, they're instructed to just like wiggle around because you can move your guy. So they would just be like shaking around. It was so cute. Yeah, like
That's awesome.
dancing. Yeah, it's pretty cute.
Cool. Well, thank you so much.
Oh, of course. My pleasure, always.
Okay. All right. So we'll switch into another gear here. I think with that too, I'm listening and I'm like, oh, okay, so I don't know if I'll have caught the whole song on that first segment, but whether I do it in June or I'll save that song too and repost it later, because that is like a brilliant mental health song. It's so good.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I'm wiggling.
Yeah, we're the avatars.
It's crazy too, because I was hoping that you would play that song because I love it.
Really?
And I think that's your mom. But don't tell me, right?
So sorry, which do you mean?
Well, when you're speaking about your own sadness, and then
I see. Like I'm speaking to
caring. I just was like, oh, is that Emmett's mom?
Oh, that's really sweet. Yeah, no, I mean, for me, it was like every relationship that I had in some way I felt was impacting, or I felt that my mental health, and I think this is really common for people who struggle with mental illness, it's like almost amplified by the fact that you know that it's impacting the people that you love. So like not only is it hurting you, but it's hurting others, and then that in turn hurts you more. And like for sure that was something, like my mom and I are very, very close now, and that wasn't always the case, but that was definitely like a burden that I carried. And it's so funny because like burdens are like, as human beings, I genuinely believe that we are created to be relational, and that means sharing both the joys and the pains. And so you don't really get to know somebody or have a meaningful connection with somebody if you don't share your burdens, because we're meant to. And so a lot of that for me was like releasing that, like allowing my mom to like help me through things, or allowing my partner to help me through things. And that starts with like talking about difficult things, but it's easier said than done, right? And I had a lot of therapy, and that was helpful.
Oh, good. I like that.
Yes, I'm sure you do. So I'm sure you do.
let's talk about this. I don't want to just start moving into something that I'd like to use without getting your permission.
Yes,
That
sure.
this is, let's do this part. This is good stuff.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, everybody, here we are back with Emmet. And Emmet and I are just rapping, we're talking, loving this conversation. And actually, Emmet has agreed to share a bit about Emmet's testimony, a little bit about Emmet's story. And Emmet is just like what I hear you saying, Emmet, is like you're a believer in people. Like you believe in relationship, you're an advocate for people.
Yes.
So I don't even know. Where do you begin talking about Emmet?
Mm-hmm. So when I think, when you say that I am a believer in people, the first thing that comes to mind, so you use the word believer as well. And so I think of like that in terms of faith. And then what comes to mind for me is I am a believer that I see God in my relationships to other people. And I personally, I identify myself as a Christian. That's what I grew up with. I believe in God. But that I think is just a word that is used universally for love. I think that they're one and the same. Other people like to call it other things, the universe, the creator, the divine, whatever. To me, like the name doesn't matter, but I do think the reason that I believe in that higher power and in that divine love is because I've seen it reflected in my relationships, and the way that people are capable of showing love to each other. I think that it is our like natural inclination to do so rather than to cause harm to each other, or to isolate, even though we tell ourselves a lot of the time that loneliness is okay and that we deserve it. We don't. And that for me has that really sums up my entire belief system, and my entire journey is like being relational and having those connections and maintaining them. I think that is like hands down the most important aspect of life and of being.
Yeah, and isolation is a very important word, and it connects to so much of our dark emotion and the shame. Like we just think, okay, I should isolate if I'm feeling this terribly, or if I don't fit my own body, or if I don't fit in my own faith orientation, that's something that should be secret.
Yeah.
But then you're saying relationship.
Yeah. And relationship doesn't happen if we have secrets. And we have secrets because we have shame. And for me, growing up, I had a lot of shame. And I think it was difficult because I had no education around like LGBTQ identities other than that there's homosexuality and it's a sin. It's not good. And I knew like from the time that I was young, I just always, so for people who don't know me, like I'm female to male transgender. And so I was born female and then later transitioned to male. And growing up, I always just knew that I was a boy, but I didn't have the language to express it. And I didn't know that happened to other people. So I really just thought that there was something wrong with me, that I was crazy. And it was just like really hard to try and make sense of this thing that I had no words to express. And so that like over time as a kid, it didn't really feel like the end of the world. But as I got older and hit puberty and went into junior high, and I started to develop feelings for a close friend of mine who was a girl, and that's when it really like kind of hit me in the face. But even after that, like I've always journaled regularly from the time I was a kid, and I remember not being able to write it down on paper because I was afraid that would make it real, even though I knew deep down that was something very real to me. And I spent a lot of time praying and asking God to take those desires away from me and to change me, and then being very angry that he didn't. And that obviously really hurt my relationship to my faith in and of itself. But because of the language that was used about queer people in my community, of course I didn't feel safe to talk about it. And I think that's why a lot of people in religious communities think that there aren't queer people in them. But the reality is there are a ton of queer people in the church who just don't feel that it's safe to tell their stories or to talk about the way that they feel. And so I spent like a couple of years not telling anybody. And these were like people that I grew up with from kindergarten to grade 9. I went to the same Christian school. And so I was really terrified of like losing the only relationships that I had. And I think that's what spiraled me into like the throes of drug use, because it gave me an outlet to put all of those feelings to. Like when I left junior high, I started going to Vic, which is an art school that's very open and diverse. And that was like very exciting for me because I was starting fresh away from everybody and everything that I knew. But I was also like, this is really scary. And I was really socially awkward because I wasn't used to making new relationships with people who had different backgrounds. And part of it for me was like, yes, I was using drugs to numb all of the emotions, but I also like realized that in using drugs and partying, I could easily make connections with people or develop friendships, whether they were based on anything meaningful or not. I was just so lonely and isolated that seemed like a good solution for me at the time.
Right. And it's interesting when I hear you speaking, so often people will refer to drugs and alcohol as self-medicating, but there's also a space to acknowledge that it's spiritual medicating. And like when I hear you speak, Emmet, and some of the pieces that are on your new album, I'm so glad that you have woke so that others can wake. And the theology I hear in the music that you're putting out there, as well as the positive messages about mental health and love.
Yeah.
So psychology, theology, and love, like it's just this beautiful, important connection.
Yeah, totally. And those things are all so deeply connected. I think that everything is rooted in love, and if it's not, there's something wrong with it. And that,
right?
It took me a long time to get to that point, and to identify, like, is this love? Because I think a lot of people fall also into a space of like thinking that, for example, like when the church says things like, well, I'm telling you the truth in love, it doesn't really feel like love all the time, like if you're telling me that I don't belong in a space where you are because of something about myself that I can't control, that God gave me on purpose, that to me doesn't feel like love. And like for me, I think it took me a while to get to this point, but I like now looking back, I think that people in the church, they're all victims to the same indoctrination. And so I don't hold like negative energy towards people who perpetuate that necessarily. If they're willing to have open dialogue about stuff and to learn and to do the research, that's very different than a person who is, for example, coming into my Instagram DMs and saying, you're going to hell and you're wrong and all of that, without having any kind of relationship with me and then not being willing to have a conversation beyond that. Like, that's very different. And so I've had the pleasure of being able to go into church spaces and kind of be like, okay, I'm not going to bring up the fact that I'm queer, but if it comes up, then we'll have that conversation. Because that's a conversation I want to have with people I'm in relationship with. And then it would come up. And at that point, it's like I'm at dinner at their house and it's like, well, too late. You already love me. And now you have to deal with this. And so that was sort of my approach. And
but how normal we all do that.
Yeah, totally. Well, and you don't feel comfortable talking about things that are super like in depth, and like that was the core of like my shame and my isolation. And people will just open that door and be like, oh, well, I want to talk about all your stuff. And I'm like, no. Like, I get to decide when that happens. But more often than not, people were overwhelmingly supportive, which was really wonderful for me, and I think is make or break for a lot of people. Like, I mean, I know of people who don't have support from their families or their churches, and that is life-threatening.
Right.
Yep.
Well, and what a truth that we're all people like everybody else, and we all deserve a space to feel safe and to choose what and when and how we share things. And I don't put all my stuff out there unless I am feeling like pretty safe, right? And that's the same for you. And I appreciate too, Emmett, your authenticity sharing here, you know, because it is powerful to hear your story, and thank God you're here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Yeah. And there's a point in time where I didn't foresee making it to 25 years old. And now I'm 25. I just released an album, which is my dream growing up as a kid. And so but the fact that I'm even alive as a teenager was something I didn't foresee. So the fact that I'm alive and I'm actively pursuing something that means something to me, and I've found a community to belong to, is more than I could ever afford to ask for.
Exactly. Great. Yeah. So Emmett, will you play another song for us?
I absolutely will. So
yay! Free concert for me. Free concert for me. And all you guys. You're welcome.
Yeah. I'm just gonna have to make this speed. Oopsie. All right. Oopsie. There we go. Okay. Thanks for bearing with me. Here we go.
No problem. So Emmet Michael, are you ready?
This song is called I Hope You're Home, which is the title track off my new album. And it's about a friend of mine who went through a very similar journey to mine, but didn't necessarily have the support that he needed. We lost him last October 2019. So this is for anybody who has experienced a loss from mental illness or addiction. Yeah, this one's for you.
It's on my mind, you're on my heart, I can't get back my missing parts. No one's wholehearted from the start. The longing makes us who we are, and we've got roots but we can't grow back. I hope you kept your soul intact. If love is just a heart attack, I'll tear it out and give it back. Who I am now, it ain't half bad, but it ain't half good, and I can't relax. Another soul slips through the cracks, another soul I can't get back. Yeah, I've got promise, but I've got a past. It's any day I could fall off track. Who I am now, it ain't half bad, but it ain't half good, and I can't go back. Was this the only way? Could I have made you stay? Were the things still left unsaid? You wish you'd had the strength to say. I hope where you are now, you feel more like yourself, that your body feels like home and not a burden or a cage. When I heard the news, I couldn't breathe. A list of things I can't unsee. When I heard that song, I couldn't sing. I couldn't write about anything. I wanted to call, but there's no one to reach. And I tried to pray, but I couldn't speak. But I think God hears, and He hears me still, and He still hears me against my will. Was this the only way? Could Should I have made you stay? Were there things still left unsaid? You wish you'd had the strength to say. I hope where you are now, you feel more like yourself. That your body feels like home and not a burden or a cage. You were in the dark, but I always saw light. Somewhere there behind you, shaking hands and wondering eyes.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's,
Thank you.
oh my word, just brilliant. Beautiful, beautiful. Such an important song.
Thank you.
Okay, so we can just, this is awesome, Emmett.
I'm glad.
Sir, and we're going a little bit overtime. So if
Okay.
we do one more piece, just if we do the God-shaped hole thing, and maybe you just want to introduce it and
Sure.
all these things, however you want to do it, whatever you do. Because I mean, it's such a special song. I'm like, I don't know if we talk about it.
Sure, yeah. No, that's great. Let me tune my guitar before we get
Sure.
going.
No problem.
Sweet.
I have so much content here and I'm like, okay, so I'm sort of turning my wheels because I don't know if you need me to be quiet while you're doing that.
No. You're good.
Okay. But I'm thinking I might just do additional airings on Pride Week. So then I can do the vlogs, I can do then do the clips of the music and
Cool.
have more content that week.
Yeah.
And I'm sort of thinking, because I do Wednesday, Saturday, Sunday. I'll see how many pieces I have.
Sure. Yeah. I'm good with whatever.
And then are you okay if I use some of the pictures of you, just whatever?
Oh, yeah, whatever you feel like using. Yeah, that's fine.
Yay. Okay,
Yay.
cool. Okay, guys. Wow, Emmett, thank you for being here. This has been a very powerful moment in my life, just to really be clear. And I've asked Emmett to sing my favorite song off of his album. It's brilliant. So feel free to say what you'd like, Emmett. And then
Sure.
Thank you for sharing your
Thank
music
you.
with us.
Thank you. I'm really glad you like the song. I appreciate that. It was a hard one for me to write, and it took a while for me to, after I wrote it, to feel comfortable performing it. And actually, one of the first places that I did perform it was I was an opening act for a band that was playing at a church, and it was not an affirming church. And this is a song that is about coming out as queer in the church. And I was with people who had told me, they were like, oh, I don't know if you should play that song. It's really it's really vulnerable. And these are people that loved me, and they were just worried that I would play the song and that people in the church would be judgmental, and they didn't want me to get hurt. And so they're like, maybe this isn't the space. And so I was like, okay. And then when I was on stage, I had my set list all planned out, and the song wasn't on the list. But I just felt moved to share it at the end. And I was like, screw it. I know people told me not to play this song, but I did. And afterwards, people came up to me and they were like people I didn't know. And they're like, that was a really beautiful song. And it made me really think, and thank you. And there was no negative feedback. And so that was really cool to be able to share that. And so I think that moment made me feel more comfortable sharing music and stories related to my experience coming out in the church. It was really neat for me to be able to record and put this song out, because I made a music video for it. And I was like, how can I include other people in the telling of this story? Because it was really important for me to highlight other people's experiences coming out in the church and talking about their own identities. in a way that highlighted people who had very different experiences from mine, because I think it's important that people know that like I am not the end all be all for what happens when you come out in the church. And I got like an overwhelming amount of submissions that were like video clips of people in the LGBTQ community. Each person was holding a handwritten sign with something, and I told them just write anything in relation to the message of the song. And so some people wrote something like about their identity and affirmation, or something negative that they had been told while in a church space, Bible verses if they wanted to that were really encouraging to them. So it was really neat because you had like some people who still very much were immersed in faith, and other people who left the church and never wanted to look back. And I think those are both very valid experiences. And so it was like neat to have that array of people sharing. I remember watching the music video back and just being like totally moved by it. It's very cool to be able to put something out there in the midst of other people who are willing to share, and to have that sense of like unity. And it's liberating because we're all sending that off together. So that was really cool. If you get a chance to check out the video, for anyone who's watching, I highly recommend it. There's a lot of good stuff in there.
Yeah. I'll link it below and or put
Great.
it in the description, and also all of Emmet's stuff, because Emmet's all over and Emmet is awesome.
Well, thanks. But yeah, so God-shaped hole is like, for me, it was my expression of this is what I'm seeing going on in the church. And I think that this is not how love is meant to be exercised. And I think that as Christians, we are called to be loving and to accept people and invite them in. And I see a lot of Christians not doing those things in the name of the God that I love and believe in and believes loves me. And so that was really difficult for me to see that contrast. And it was important in the face of that for me to learn to recognize that those people are only working with the information that they have and doing the best that they know how to. And so I felt that if I showed them love in spite of these things, that maybe that would inspire them to perceive unconditional love in a new way. So that's what this song is all about. I'm going to go ahead and play it. The dogs are singing too upstairs.
My children are singing in the basement, so we've got
Wonderful.
a big audience.
Great, love it.
So long, farewell, goodbye. I've got wars still left to fight. Tooth and nail, eye for an eye. If flows revenge, you've got it right. And there's been far too little grace from people claiming to be saved. All God's children spewing hate, digging graves and saving face. I used to always pray I wouldn't wake the next day, still feeling like my body left my soul betrayed. But God don't make mistakes, it's no mistake that I was made. Hey, you don't know what you don't know. All our hearts are God-shaped hole. I'm so far from perfect, still don't admit my own defeat. And my doubts, my greatest defects, all my fear is crippling. I wish I wasn't always quiet when when I needed to speak up. I wish my words were always gentle when I spoke about love. Shame still haunts aloud like a ghost underground. Why am I most lonely when I'm standing in a crowd of people of the faith? I hope someday that could change, 'cause you don't know what you don't know. All our hearts are God-shaped. Oh. Tell me, how'd you make it look so easy? Kick me while I'm down on my knees, praying for the strength to love you like he loves me. And tell me, oh, how'd you make it look so easy? Kick me while I'm down on my knees, praying for the strength to love you like he loves me.
Thank you so much. That's absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll have all of Emmet's info all over the place. Thank you so much, and blessings to you. Blessings on all that you're doing for everybody.
Oh, thank you very much, and blessings to you right back. I always really, really appreciate mental health professionals. They've carried me through and guided me through to a lot of points in my life, and have allowed me to be able to accept myself and to see so many people doing that work, and you highlighting people and stories that need to be told is really huge. So thank you for holding space with me.
Yeah, you're so welcome. So mutual welcomeness, mutual thankfulness, and blessings. All right, take care, Emmet.
Yeah, you as well. Thanks.